She said I had a boyfriend, which was true. Billy Harris was his name, and I got all embarrassed even though no one could see me. Then she told me he liked me too, which was not so true, since if you asked him, "Do you like Katie Nash?" he would have said, "Who?" I miss my aunts a lot. Since my mother died a couple of years ago, I never see them anymore. We used to go and visit for a week or so every summer. Rose was very prim and proper, but full of a warm love. When I used to stay there, my cousins and I washed up for bed at night in a dishpan at the kitchen sink, and Aunt Rose made sure we got our ears good. Ivory soap she used, those floating cakes bigger than a kid's whole hand. She made plain dinners, but they were the kind of food a person always enjoys. Like just meatloaf from the recipe on the back of the oatmeal box, served with mashed potatoes, butter filling the little well in the middle, and some green beans from the can, all served on an embroidered tablecloth. Her sheets smelled like outside, and everybody used to say you could eat from her kitchen floor. I used to think, why would you want to do that? And I would imagine my Uncle Harry sitting there, cross-legged, with his napkin tucked into his shirt, leaning over awkwardly to lift his scrambled eggs from the linoleum. Aunt Betty was a wild woman. That's what she called herself. She told me she was engaged to another man when my Uncle Jim proposed to her. She wore a lot of makeup and smoked constantly, and painted her fingernails and toenails blood red. She and my uncle were very social, and I never saw anyone look as glamorous as she did when they went out. She would wake up her children for a meteor shower or a good sunrise, and she was always asking them to tell her things they learned in school. She thought her children were wonderful. Every Sunday morning, she would make monkey bread, and there was always enough for everyone. My dad doesn't want to visit my aunts anymore. I guess he has a new life now with my stepmother, Ginger, and the aunts just don't figure in. Sometimes I get mail from them. A joke card from Betty, a card with Jesus on it from Rose. They both call me Honey, which makes for an inside curl of pleasure. I thought I would always go and see them, every summer. Well, you never know what life will turn out to be. Sometimes when I lie in bed at night, I think of bad things that can happen, and how much we can never know, and it's so scary. It's like taking the lid off a box that's in front of you all the time, but usually you leave it alone. But every now and then, you take the lid off, and you look in, and the box is so dark and deep and full of writhing possibilities, it gives you the shivers. I lean back against my bed, let out a big breath, and look around my bedroom. I'm used to it now, which probably means it's about time to move. Every time I get used to something, it's time to leave it.
"We have orders,"
my father will say. And that's that. We're on the way to wherever the army tells us to go. I like this room. It feels more private than any place I've ever had, situated the way it is at the end of the hall. If my sister Diane were still living with us, she would have gotten this room. She always got the best room. But she lives by herself in California now, because she ran away when she was 18. We talk about twice a month, and once in a while she comes to visit. But mostly it's just no good between her and my father. It never was. My father was always fierce, but after my mother died, it seemed like he got a lot worse. And Diane finally just left. He never talks about it, but I know he is sorry. One thing my stepmother has done is to make my father a little softer, not so mean. It's odd. I think he loved my mother more, but he treats Ginger better. And I think I know why. It is because she is not as nice to him as my mother was. She pushes back sometimes. She draws a line and says, "Don't you cross this." Now you tell me why someone is nicer to the person who treats him worse. My favorite place in my room is my desk drawer. In it is a little figure of a bird all covered with jewels. I don't think they're real jewels, but maybe they are. It was given to me by a boy I did not know, for no reason. It was a while ago, just after my mother had died, and I was sitting